welcome to Monday Mobility with Janine. I got my special guest friend today. Yay. This is Jen Ismar.
Hi guys.
From California. So if you don't know Jen, check her out. You might know her as a coach actually, because she used to be a CrossFit coach and a weightlifting coach. But now she has her own business, so check it out. It's called Next Gen, NEXTJEN, so check that out. Today we're going to talk about hamstrings. So Jen and I were talking about the tightness in hamstrings and how sometimes we think it's one area of the hamstring and really it's another area that we didn't even know we had. We've got 3 hamstrings on the back of the leg. Hamstrings, for those of you who don't know, back of the thigh here. So there's essentially 3 hamstrings back there, from the outside, the middle, and kind of the inner. So sometimes we actually think the inner thigh is tight when it could be that medial or inside hamstring. Sometimes we think they're tight and they're actually stretched. So when we do a lot of sitting, the hip flexors or the quads get really tight and they get shortened. So then the back of the leg actually elongates, those hamstrings elongate. So that can cause a tightness symptom, or where we think it's tight when actually it's, the front of the leg needs to be stretched. So we're gonna address some of that today. A little bit on the front of the leg, definitely on the back of the leg. I'm addressing those hamstrings. One other thing that can cause some hamstring tightness before we get started is weak glutes. So if your glutes aren't firing, those hamstrings sometimes will pick up the slack for those weak glutes, and you'll feel excessive strain in the hamstring because you're overusing those, using them when you should be using the glutes, and you're using the hamstrings. So let's go ahead and get started. If you don't have a wall, you don't need one, I guess. You can do this on the floor. You can do it and tuck yourself in a ball. In fact, maybe I'll show you that. I'll do a couple different variations while Jen's on the wall. That way, if you don't have a wall, that's clear. You can still do the exercises with us. So we're gonna go to the wall. So if you do have a wall, come on over to your wall, stick your bottom all the way up against the wall. So Jen is gonna demo this one, and we're just gonna hang out with the feet flexed position. You can kind of play with things, do some circles, allow your body to move around. While she's doing that and just hanging out, I'm just gonna show you another variation. So I'm just gonna tuck myself in a ball and pull my, my knees to my chest. Okay, she's just gonna keep working that position. The longer you hang out there, you might already feel it in the back of the leg when you're on the wall. You might actually feel it in your back as your pelvis tries to relax from that, that 90-degree angle. So if you're on the floor with me, you can stretch out one leg, pull the other leg in. We're just gonna go back and forth here. Jen's gonna continue to hang out there on the wall. I'm just kind of loosening up the hip, loosen up the back of the leg, maybe the lower back. So for those of you on the wall, go ahead and bring your legs down into a squat position. So Jen's just going real wide with her legs. If you're still on the ground, you can just continue to hug those legs and allow the back to relax. She's just kind of playing with this position, pushing her knees out, kind of playing, finding space in the inner thigh, the lower back, the hip. Everyone's a little different, so what works for Jen might not be the same thing as working for you. You might be able to get your feet really far down on the wall, like Jen here. She's got a great squat. Jen's super mobile, by the way. But you might be way up high, too, on the wall, or up here, and that's totally fine. We're just going with whatever mobility you have and trying to increase that range of motion a little bit. So go ahead and continue on the wall just a little bit longer here. And for you, those of you on the floor, continue to hug. You go back and forth still, starting to get a little bit more movement, rocking. I like to do that rocking when I hold movements, noticing what's tight. You can go a little wider with those knees. If you're all tucked in a ball on the floor here, this kind of simulates what she's doing on the wall. You can do some ankle circles, kind of work open the ankles as well. Making sure you're breathing. Okay, and then go ahead and come up on out of that. Okay, Jen, come on out on the floor with me. So I'm gonna grab a pad for my knee. There's one behind you if you want one too. Yes. Just because I'm weenie and it's a hard surface. Oh, you might have noticed that we're dressed like we're going to the snow right now.
It's cold.
It's 12 degrees. Actually, I think it might be 14 or 16 degrees right now, but it's a little chilly. And even though I've got the heater right on us right now, that's why you're so close to me, huh? So we're going to go ahead and get into a half kneeling position. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see Jen head on and me from the side view. Okay, so we're going to sit up nice and tall. So a lot of people, when they get into this position here, they lose that pelvic tilt. So I want you to tuck your tailbone under. When you go into, we're gonna push forward, but when you go into that, we don't have to push very far. In fact, if you have a nice tucked pelvis, you're not gonna be able to go very far. You lose the point of the stretch and the effectiveness of the stretch when you let your pelvis kick back and you push forward. So now you're arching at the back, you're feeling in the back. You might feel a little bit in the front of the leg, but not as much as you should. So tuck that pelvis, push forward just a little bit, and you feel it right in the front of the leg. I'll switch so you can see where I'm pointing. So right here. So Jen's feeling it, she's grabbing a little bit higher. So you might have noticed she went for a little side bend. That's another variation. You can add the arm bend here, okay? You can also add a twist. So you can twist forward. Super important, making sure to keep that glute nice and tight in the back. If you let it go, the pelvis is gonna tip here. You're gonna spill out from here. You're gonna crunch the back and you're gonna lose the stretch in the front. Tuck the pelvis. For some of you, this might be enough. You might not need to shift forward at all. For other people, shifting forward is what gives you a little bit better stretch. Okay, from here, we're gonna stay on the same side, and we've just been pushing forward to address the front of the leg. Now we're gonna pull back. So stick your booty back. Try to keep your back as flat as possible. This is where we're gonna address the hamstring. So the back of the leg here. Go ahead and play with your foot position. This is what's gonna change the position on the hamstrings. The outer position, if you tip that foot in and then you kind of rotate to the outside, you're gonna feel a little bit more on the outside of that hamstring, okay? We don't wanna, because it's early in the morning, because it's really cold, we don't need to hold these. We can rock back and forth. So we add a little bit of tension and stretch, and we rock out of it. Jen's rocking nice and gentle, using some foot range of motion here to address those areas. You can turn the foot out to address more inner, okay? Rocking in and out of it. Do what's comfortable for you. You don't need to be in the pain zone, okay? We can also tip that foot up, okay? That's gonna change it. It's actually gonna increase the intensity for most people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I went, oh. Yeah, definitely tight. Where you feel it the most is going to depend on the person, right? It depends on whether you just had a workout or not as to how tight that is.
Or you sat in a car for 9 hours the other day.
Or you sat in a car. If you sat at your desk, a lot of people are sitting at home, doing work, and they don't get up and stretch, go to the water cooler, that kind of thing. So these are good ways to really stretch that out. Let's go ahead and, before we switch sides, let's just change our angle. Let's go to a side angle. I'll move back. Okay, so now to the side angle. So I mentioned that some people think their inner thigh is tight. Well, sometimes it's coming from that inner hamstring. So we can play with this position here, and being on one knee, it kind of takes out the stability component of having to stand up this way. So and we're just gonna kind of rock back and forth, and you can play with the foot position, toe down, toe up, toe forward and up. I mean, it just depends. Upper body can be up high. That's gonna change it too. Between upper body up or booty back and bend forward. So kind of play with that positioning.
It's amazing how much just changing your foot position changes the way this feels, right?
Small movements. We don't always have to make big changes to vary whether it's mobility and flexibility exercise or a strength exercise. People think I gotta add a ton of weight in order to change the exercise. Just slow it down. Smaller movements.
We talked about this too, like there's not a wrong way to do this. Like what's the right way? It's not, just go with your body and what feels good. Does one way feel better than another? Move around. There's not really a wrong way to get into these positions.
The only wrong way is pain. When you have pain, that means you're doing something wrong. Let's go and switch to the other side.
And discomfort is different than pain.
Exactly. Right? Discomfort is not pain.
I mean, it's pain, but...
So we're gonna go same thing on the other side, making sure to tuck that pelvis, squeeze that back glute, and then push forward just slightly. For most people, just slightly. For other people who are a little more flexible, you might need to get a little further into it to get deeper down into that quad. You might feel it more into like the groin, wrapping around the inner thigh. That might mean you definitely have some inner thigh tightness. So just notice how you feel. Notice what's popping out. Like I said, you can rotate with this one. Jen's rotating up. I'm rotating around and reaching forward. For some of you where balance is an issue and reaching up is difficult to maintain the balance, you can do what I'm doing and rotate this way. Okay? You can also hold on to something. Maybe closer to a wall or maybe a yoga block. You can grab a yoga block and have it next to you. So that way you can stabilize yourself as you bend over so you can get that deep psoas release. As you bend, that sends it deeper into her side and inside the hip there. Okay, and then from there, we're gonna pull back. So now we're gonna shift back on our hips, and this way we're gonna play with that foot position. So I did mention it on the other side, but it's important when you do this, you can go in and out with the bent knee, but if you bend your knee and you move only from the lower leg, you're not going to feel that stretch in the back of the leg. You got to straighten out the leg and then play with that position from the hip. Even though that ankle is moving and that foot is turning in or out, it's coming from the hip, and that's what's changing the pull on those hamstrings. So now I notice this side is much looser than the other side.
Mine too.
Much
actually.
looser. So I'm coming up and down, so that flex and point. And again, I'm coming in and out nice and gentle, so I'm starting to feel that stretch, and then I'm releasing it and coming out. And each time, maybe getting a little deeper in that stretch, just depending on how I feel. You know, you might not get real deep in it, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and shift to the side. So now working on more of the, whether it's inner thigh adductor or inner hamstring. Okay. Now you can play with the foot position if you're really flexible and you need to get deeper with it. You can get more in that straddle. If you need to come up, you can come up. A lot of other things happen when we go to a standing position. We start to compensate with our pelvis, we compensate with our back. So if you're not used to this stretch or you're really tight, staying down low is probably your best bet, and then work into that standing straddle stretch, or maybe do this first and then go to the standing straddle stretch. You know, you can twist with this one too. If you notice when you twist, it kind of targets a little bit differently. So come this way too, Jen. Do you feel it when you twist that way? Yeah. So Jen feels it when she twists this way. Oh yeah, definitely. A little bit for me. But I can definitely feel it when I twist the other way. Twisting away and pulling.
Oh yeah.
You feel that side? Yeah. Like I said, play with those hip positions, play with the foot positions, notice what's tight, what needs to be stretched. If you notice, when we're in this position here, shifting forward and backward, if you notice that you're really tight in the front of that leg, but you're also tight in the hamstrings, you might actually need to release the quad more. Those hamstrings might not be tight because they're short. They might be tight because they're stretched long because you've been doing a lot of sitting. Especially if you are one of those people who sits all day or most of the day, right? And you're noticing some tightness in the hamstring, really address the front of the leg. Don't ignore the hamstring, but you don't need to spend a ton of time on it because you're not going to be creating any change if those hamstrings are long and tight. So that's for another discussion, the short tight versus the long tight. Yeah. Well, our time is pretty much up. I hope you enjoyed our class today, working on those hamstrings and hip flexors, and enjoyed our guest today, Jen. Thank you for joining us today, Jen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You might be seeing her again. Actually, you will be seeing her, let me tell you.
Yeah.
On Wednesday's workout. So if you guys are following along on the workout Wednesday, she will be joining me as well, I guess Arnie won't be joining us. He is working this week. So he won't be joining us, but Jen will be taking his place. So everyone have a wonderful week. Make it great. Stay safe. Stay warm. Actually, California, I guess you are warm.
Yeah.
If you're in Oregon, Montana, Idaho, well, probably Washington, stay warm, guys. Make it great. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.